Welcome back to the Pixelists Podcast, my friends, the podcast about all nerdy things we love and enjoy. And as always, we're your hosts. That's Blake. I'm Will, and today we're here to talk about our flagship, a little D&D. Well, yeah, wait, what B&B D&D? There it is. That's because I called it flagship and not bread and butter, so I confused myself. But you know, a classic Pixelist intro here. But we're here to talk about Critical Role today. But before we do, you know, our little coffee talk, our little announcements. By the way, do you actually have any? Because I do have some today.
I have a empty cup of coffee. Didn't have my cream today.
You're already beaned up. Oh,
makes me pretty unhappy.
so did you just have it black, or how did you compensate?
Put a little milk in there.
Oh, okay. So what do you usually do? Like just heavy cream or half and half?
Half and half, half and half, and a little bit of honey.
Oh, a little bit of honey. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I can see that being good.
Never really came up in our conversations, I guess.
I guess not. Yeah. Is that so? Okay, this is reminding me because you know we talked. I went to Doomsday the other day.
Yeah.
And I didn't get this, but I saw it on their menu. And you know the Bader Meinhof phenomenon?
Is that where you like once you learn about something you start to like
see it other places? Yeah. So I've now seen it like 2 or 3 times, and I didn't know this existed, but it's like 50% coffee, cold brew specifically, 50% lemonade. Have you ever had that?
What is that?
I don't know. That's like I said, I discovered it like 2 days ago, and now I've seen it at like 3 different coffee places.
Nah, man. Heck no, man. I don't know about that.
Yeah, I didn't try it, and I haven't tried it, but I'm curious about it.
Yeah, I guess it could be a little tasty. I don't know.
It was weird to me that like it was not only just a thing there, but I have now seen it other places, meaning it is like must be a thing.
Is that the Panera Bread thing? Is that no, that's not coffee. I was thinking, isn't there like a lemonade that like is so much caffeine? Didn't like someone die drinking it?
Oh, really? Oh gosh. I didn't hear that story.
Yeah, I think Panera Bread had like let me just look real quick.
Bro, while you're looking that up, have you seen those TikToks or those YouTube shorts where it's like the Dunkin' Donuts coffee orders?
No.
And it's just like how much sugar is in it. It's so gross.
I believe it. I've seen some pictures of like popular mainstream like drinks and foods, and then like a cup of sugar next to it or on top of it.
Yeah.
And like some of them you're like, dude,
that's so bad, man.
Much sugar. It's crazy. That's American culture though, I guess.
America.
Yeah. So yeah, Panera had these drinks called charged sips, and it was a lemonade drink that had 300 milligrams of caffeine. An 8-ounce coffee has 100 milligrams. So basically 3 cups of coffee in this lemonade drink.
Yikes.
And it's almost a Monster energy drink is 160 milligrams. So not quite double, but a lot.
Yeah.
And I guess someone drank like 3 of them or 2 of them and died.
Bro,
I mean,
that's awful. I can't even imagine, man. That's like have you ever gotten that way if you have like too much coffee?
Yeah.
Yeah, I hate that feeling. I get like anxious and like jittery.
Especially like when I do like a line of Coke, I feel the same.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding.
Just a few shots of espresso, a couple lines.
While you have to do it while dabbing is kind of the impression I got.
That's the pre-podcast ritual over here.
Yeah, that's how we millennials do it these days. So
that's right.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, no, it's kind of crazy though. But that was what I was thinking of when you mentioned like the coffee. And there's another. You mentioned what was it called? Bader
Meinhof. I might be pronouncing it wrong, but
there's another phenomenon. I don't know what it's called, but it's like where you're like loosely associating 2 things, thinking they're the same, but they're not, which is what I was doing with the charge sips thing. But it's just a full breakdown on, you know, another one that's
we're here
really
to help teach, you know?
Yeah. The other one, not to get too off the trail here. I almost said off the passage. Not to get too off the passage. The other one that's really weird to me is the Mandela effect.
Mm,
Like things that
yeah.
it happened,
Yeah, that's
but it
crazy.
didn't happen.
Yeah.
That's what's really weird to
Like
me.
the Berenstain Bears. That's a big one.
No, what is that?
You're not familiar with that one? Do you
No.
remember the Berenstain Bears?
Yeah, the kids book,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Well, okay, I don't
Are you
remember
telling me it
which one.
doesn't exist?
Well,
Or
okay. I might get them switched here. But so Berenstain, right? But like apparently it was Berenstain.
oh,
But like
interesting.
I and everybody else remember Berenstain.
Oh my gosh, you're right. It is Berenstain. What?
Right?
What?
So that's like a really popular one.
That can't be right. Someone's redone the internet. This can't be true. You know another one, that actually now that I was gonna give another example, but I'm so shocked by this that now I can't remember what I was gonna say.
I know another popular one is the Shazam movie or something like that.
Yeah. Which yeah, I've had that one too. There was one I was gonna say that people oh, Shakey's? A lot of people don't believe that it was Shakey's, man.
The
That
ice
it was
cream place?
Yeah, that it's always been Shakes. And
Mm.
I'm like, "It wasn't, it was Shakey's." And I ran into someone, my wife gives me a hard time. People, friends, if you can call them that, give me a hard time about, "Oh, yeah, sure, it was called Shakey's." But I was vindicated because, like 2 months ago, we were out with some friends. I met this guy who, like, grew up eating Shakey's, and he goes, "Yeah, did you know," he said, "Fun fact, back in the day, it was called Shakey's." And I was like, "Yes, thank you."
Bro, you could have just tagged me in on that one because I would have had your back.
Oh, my wife
Uh,
doesn't really like you, but
oh, that
yeah,
makes sense. That
I'm
makes
just
sense.
kidding.
But yeah, I remember they had to like because there's like another place called Shakey's, so I think
Yeah,
they had to change it
yeah,
or something.
right, yeah. So anyway, some nice vindication though.
But yeah,
Anyway, I guess we should do this
yeah, I
podcast, huh?
guess so. I guess we can get into it. Just typical announcements. Worlds Beyond Number is back. We will be talking about that. We don't haven't really planned a time, but probably sometime soon.
Yep,
Um, Monday at the latest.
yep.
And so, we've said it once, we'll say it every time, but y'all really need to pick up Worlds Beyond Number, especially now that we have found out this is the final chapter of this. I don't even know what to call
Yep,
it, I guess, because it is supposedly coming back at some point, but
yep,
the end of the first main campaign, the final chapter of the end of the first main campaign.
yep.
And it's been phenomenal. So you should definitely check it out. But other than that, we got our Legend of Vox Machina watch party. Have you seen the next 3 episodes yet?
No, it is on my agenda tonight.
Okay. You got,
I'm playing with fire, dude. So we got some YouTube creators, man, who, man, they're wilding about this stuff, and so
you
I'm
just
getting
mean like
all over my.
spoilers and stuff?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah. But there's also this is also to get off the passage, a really annoying trend of like it's over or this changes everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like everyone's doing the same thumbnail
Mm-hmm.
title, and it kind of
Mm-hmm.
gets under my skin. So I'm starting to see some of that too with Legend of Vox Machina. When I saw one the other day, it was like they did what,
Yeah.
and I was just like, come on, I don't want to.
It
Anyway,
annoys me too, but it does like
yeah,
but I know it's the game,
yeah,
like it's like
right.
you
I
gotta
get it.
do the clickbait, like
Yeah, I get it.
so like I get it, but yeah, it kind of triggers me too.
Yeah. But then again, I was looking at our podcast because I was uploading our live stream,
Yeah.
and I was looking at how you had done the previous live stream just so it was kind of like uniform.
Yeah.
And it was like, this is our live stream. I was like, okay, yeah, this works, sure. Okay, copy, paste.
Oh
So
yeah. Well, in my defense, you don't really have to be clickbaity with the podcast. Maybe you do actually. I don't know. Maybe I should.
there's podcast
We
SEO,
probably should
you know?
lean more into the
Yeah.
game sometimes. But anyways, um, I forgot where I was. Oh yeah, we're watching. So we're gonna be watching the next 3 episodes of Legend of Vox Machina tomorrow. I think at around 6 p.m. Central Time. Which there will be an event in the Discord that will convert to whatever your local time zone is. So I know a lot of you are in different places in the world. So join the Discord, figure out when that is for you. We would love to have you join us. And then additionally, we will be having our Campaign 3 watch party tomorrow night during Critical Role. So whenever that is for you guys, which we'll talk more about this as we get into our discussion here, but really excited for this next episode. Should be a fun one. And other than that, we got our live stream Friday, 1 p.m. Central Time. Again, event in the Discord to figure out when that is for you. And anything else that I missed?
I think that's it. I think we got it.
Well, alrighty then, y'all. Let us jump into the main event then. Let me just get my notes really quick.
Same.
All right. So before we jump into our discussion of Critical Role, as always, we like to recap it, and we will cut that recap out and host it separately for your viewing convenience. So if you just happen to be on the recap video and you want to see our full thoughts, be sure to check the other video that will be linked down in the discussion below. But this is episode 110 of Campaign 3, In the Shadow of War. And we pick up with Bell's Hells basically having just had this communion with the Raven Queen in her temple in Vasselheim. So they're kind of, recuperating from that, leave the temple and are discussing, okay, what should our plans be before we make these final moves? I think as Blake put it last week, the final save point before you're heading into the final boss fight. Like, what do we want to get done here? Imogen does wonder if the Downfall movie has been projected out to the world yet, but they think it hasn't because they think they would probably know for sure if that had happened. But interestingly, Matt does make Laura roll a d20 with no explanation and no further clarification on it. So maybe that was related to her mother. We don't really know. She then sends a message to Keyleth, basically giving her a status report, telling them, what they're up to. They're in the city. And Keyleth responds and says that she's not in the city right now. She is trying to gather her old allies, and one of them is proving difficult to track down, basically. But she lets them know that Lady Allura should be around in the Platinum Sanctuary, and they can, go meet with her. Ashton also asks Keyleth if she knows any way to speak to Titans. And she's like, well, they've been long dead, but perhaps if you go to where the ties to the elements are the strongest in one of the Ashari villages, that'd probably be your best bet. Laudna, however, mentions that, hey, there's a corpse of a Titan right here in this city, so maybe we could try that. After this, Imogen sends a mom to her mother, Liliana, and we find out that Liliana says she has been able to keep lewdness at bay so far in terms of sending out the Downfall movie to everybody. And she says that so far she thinks lewdness still trusts and believes her. The group then head to the Platinum Sanctuary, but on the way they run into Captain Xandis. We finally meet up with them again. We find out that they've only been in town for a few days, but they met Keyleth. They were given a title, Captain Xandis Keybane. And this is because after the events of the Malleus Key, Xandis basically wandered the Hellcatch for 3 days before they were eventually found. And after explaining everything, they were honored with this title and a new ship. And the new ship is called the Key Breaker in remembrance of their old deeds. And Xandis will actually now be leading some of the sky ships on the assault of the Malleus Key due to their knowledge of the area. So everyone kind of catches up a little bit, wishes each other good luck, and then part ways again. So the crew reaches the Platinum Sanctuary, find Allura, kind of, give the situation report on both sides, and they let her know everything that happened in the Feywild and how the Unseelie will probably not be interfering in this battle, hopefully. Allura tells them that the forces are all gathered here in Oncarel and also in Whitestone, and they're all prepared. They're basically just waiting for the preparations to teleport them all to the battle, and that Ruidians are preparing on Ruidus as well. The gang basically talks about if they have any final goodbyes they plan on saying, because it's probably now or never type of situation as far as that goes. And finally, Allura says that the Mighty Nine should be arriving within the day for them to meet with, because the Mighty Nine will be escorting them to the central pillar within Gravirus before the two teams split for their respective tasks. So they part ways with Allura for now and say they're going to, do their final things, and they'll see her again in a few hours. But Allura does give them a few potions and 400 platinum to help them prepare. So the party then basically splits into two groups. Well, technically three, but two main groups. Team Titan, which is going to go uh, with Ashton to go see if he can commune or do anything with this corpse of a Titan, and Team Shopping to go get final supplies that they need. The two teams split into Chetney, Imogen, Orem, and Breas are going to be Team Shopping, and Ashton, Laudna, and Fern are going to be Team Titan. The third group is just Dorian, who goes off on his own for a bit. And there is a really funny moment where Dorian casts Charm Person on Chetney in order to get him to give the party the money so that they can afford the shopping trip. So quickly, Team Shopping goes and finds this shop where they basically find this. They're looking for diamond dust for resurrections primarily. So they're going around, they can't find anything, and eventually they find this shopkeeper who says he doesn't have anything, and then after like some rolls and some coin, find out that this guy is like running an illicit like forgery shop in the back rooms and actually does have diamond dust for them. So for the right price, he hooks them up and they're able to get a bunch of diamond dust. Breas also buys some art supplies, and Chetney buys some drugs, some spice. Meanwhile, Dorian, who is on his own, is kind of strolling through the city amongst all of these encampments where the soldiers are preparing for battle. And he is using his Bard class feature, where he is just playing songs as he's strolling through these camps. And he is singing songs about Bell's Hells and their adventures and their victories, in an attempt to kind of spread the word of Bell's Hells and these heroes that are, going on this mission to save everybody. And it's this really beautiful moment. We then cut to Team Titan, and we are seeing them approach the Titan, and Ashton gets this feeling in his stomach as he approaches it. He feels connected to it, but also there's something like ominous there. And that's where we go to break on the first half.
Great job. So coming back from the break, Team Titan is sort of moving through the Titan, led by Ashton, who has this sort of spectral force that's guiding him along. There's a number of shops and just little areas that have been built out here in the Titan. It's a place where people live and work essentially. And eventually they make their way through some tunnels where there are a number of like runes inscribed on the walls. Laudna does her Eyes of the Runekeeper to realize that these are glyphs that protect the Titan from any kind of necromantic magic, which eliminates that plot thread for us, I guess. And eventually they make their way to a large chamber where Ashton builds a fire and does his, I can't think what it's called, like his earth walking feature where you can like move through earth.
Yeah.
Essentially like activates his shard and sinks into the earth, and actually goes like into a trance. Like Fern and Laudna are kind of like, okay, he's doing something. And Ashton, meanwhile, enters sort of like this liminal space where he sees on the horizon a number, I think Matt describes like a crown of mountain peaks that stretch up and face him. And he essentially begins to have a conversation with this primordial essence, for lack of a better phrase, that is clarified to not be the Titan within him. I think he has Comort, or maybe it's Roshan. I can't remember.
I think it's Comort.
Okay. But he begins to have this conversation, and what he's told, he asks, "Who are you?" And they say, "We are the rock and stone. We are this world," which Ashton thinks it's identifying itself as Exandria itself. It goes on to say, "We are lost, scattered, and we are everything." And Ashton basically says, if we can make the gods leave, how do we remake this world? How do we fix what's broken? And the world says back, we've always been, and everything is cyclical. And as this conversation happens, a hand actually stretches up and entombs Ashton. And as it releases, he finds himself looking at this sort of like spectral green gemstone, this eye that sort of hovers in front of him. He grabs it and presses it up against his cloudy eye of his damaged side of his face. and realizes that this is a specter of Comort that is now speaking to him. The specter says, "You are my memory. We are lost, but you are not." And he asks, like, to show me, like, I want to understand. And he gets visions of essentially life before, I guess you could say life before the gods, maybe. But Matt talks about endless chaos and sort of like this beauty in chaos. And rather than Ashton thinking like maybe this was a time of too much chaos, maybe since then there hasn't been enough chaos. Um, Ashton asks, "Will this world be okay being remade?" And the voice says back, "It will." And he says, "Well, what about the people on it?" And the voice says, "The strong will be able to withstand the world being remade, and those who are not strong enough will be made into something stronger." Um, Ashton comes out of this glimpse and resolves to believe that this world needs more chaos, which seems to be pressing on towards the release Predathos plan. But we'll talk about that after the recap. Fern and Laudner are kind of like, "You okay, bud?" And he like shares the whole story of what happened as they head down to Shanks, which is kind of like this dive bar, which the party jokingly believe is in the butthole of the Titan. They go down, moving along. They buy a bottle of liquor from this place, and then they go to reunite with the rest of the group. Imogen sort of sending a message and yelling like, "Why are y'all at a bar? Like we're starting this mission." They reunite. Along the way in the street, they come across some Kreen soldiers who is accompanying an older goblin woman in this ornate clothing. This is the Sky Sybil Miriam. And the Sky Sybil basically says, "Hey, for your journey, we have a gift for you from the Kreen dynasty." And within this are 2 crystal vials, which are 2 potions of possibility, which they've had prior to this moment, and a gray glass orb that seems to have a storm inside. Casting the Identify spell, this is the Sphere of Dunamantic Restoration. When it's thrown and shatters, all creatures within 15 feet get half their expended hit dice back. They get 1d4 of their spell slots back up to level 4, and they get the benefits of a short rest, and then this item is destroyed. So they were like, this is going to be a really good, like, oh no, what do we do moment of using this item. They also run into Allura, and they're like, "Hey, you're supposed to like send us to this, fishing village, right?" And Allura's like, "Actually, someone else is going to do that." I think it was the Master of War was the title, but this is actually Orum's sister, Lita, who's come here as part of a greater retinue of the Ashari who's now present. Lita and Maeve teleport them to this abandoned village. There's an interesting data point where they're like, "Hey, have y'all run into like the creepy lake monster?" And they're like, "We haven't seen anything. Like we saw the note you left, but nothing's been going on." And this is basically where they're waiting for the Mighty Nine to arrive. And for the last like half hour of this episode, we get some final goodbyes. Some sad kind of like just like, oh man, this is real. Like this is like literally the final checkpoint. Orum goes to Lita and essentially says goodbye to her. And when this is all over, can't wait for us just to relax and reconnect. He then goes to Imogen and asks Imogen to send a message to his mom that just says like, "Hey, I love you." And his mom basically says, "Hey, I love you too. And I found a new pie recipe because I know you love pies," which for our listeners, that's an Exandria Unlimited reference. Imogen sends a message to her dad and says, "Hey, I know you did your best and I love you." Her dad sends a message back that says, "I love you also, and your horses miss you. Your horses miss you." And then we get a couple other conversations. Laudna looks for Ropey and does in fact find Ropey. After Matt ruled that she couldn't, she was like, wait, it's in the boat, in Bodhi. So finds Ropey and takes Ropey with her. Breas and Dorian have a conversation where Breas basically says like, "Hey, how can I get these people to trust me?" And Dorian's like, "Well, start being trustworthy, stop lying." And there's just kind of like Sam does a great job of like trying to learn how to be a wholesome person despite being sworn to the Prince of Devils. And but it's like, "Hey, good talk. Thanks for the advice on how to be a good person." And then lastly, Ashton finds Dorian and is like, "Hey, I don't really have anyone to say goodbye to, but I do have a list of people to say sorry to. So I want to tell you sorry for not being as kind to you as I could have been when we first met. And Dorian takes this opportunity to say, like, hey, maybe you should try to be a little bit more likable, if that's something you're up to. And Ashton's like, okay, yeah, I can try that. Anyway, the party waits around until finally the Mighty Nine arrive, and the table is very giddy as they get to dual role play as all of our favorite Mighty Nine characters arriving and being like, who are these people? As they meet Bell's Hells. And that is where our episode comes to a close. Episode 110 of Campaign 3 of Critical Role. I don't have the title. Do you have it by chance?
In the Shadow of War.
Okay. And if you're watching just the recap, click the link to get our full thoughts on the episode.
Well done, my friend. Well done. Yeah, that ending part was so fun.
Yeah.
Even though it was only like 2 minutes, definitely like my favorite part of the
Right.
episode.
Yeah.
Because well, I was gonna say it was the first time we've seen the Mighty Nine in this campaign, but that's not really true. We've seen
Right.
the first time we've seen them as a whole. And I guess we'll just start here. But it's just so cool to see the cast like in real time shift between them, and that's why I'm really excited for next episode too.
Pretty effortless, actually.
Yeah, it was
It's
cool to
like-
see them kind of like all like do their little like mannerisms to get back into the character.
Yeah.
But I can only imagine how jarring and difficult that it actually is. Like, especially if it's going to be
Yeah.
for presumably at least like half an episode this week,
Yeah.
if not the entire episode.
Yeah.
But I'm really glad they're going for it.
Yeah, me too.
I know back when we found out about this 3-pronged mission, we even talked about like, could they even like try to do this all at the same table? And it seems like they won't be. We'll get like standalone, I would imagine, episodes of each mission. But I'm glad we're also kind of getting both, in the sense that we're going to at least have this traveling session together where they're going to do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, did you watch the cooldown by chance?
No, I didn't.
So they talked about it, just like how kind of strange it is to like, because like in character, you know, you're in character, you're seeing the world through that character's eyes, and then all of a sudden you're ripped out of it into another character that's now interacting with that character, and just like the kind of mental like gymnastics you have to do.
Yeah.
But they're all talking about how fun it was and how they like each wanted to interact. They want like every single possible Bell's Hells Mighty Nine interaction to take place, but there won't be time for it really. And Matt was even like, yeah, it's too bad you're going to have a timer of, you know, these pressing events. So I think it'll be chaos, but it'll be really fun. And I know that it's just, I'm sure a lot of people have said this, but I actually didn't get to watch live the second half with everybody. But I know just everybody must have been so hyped to see the Mighty Nine. I know it's a lot of people's favorite campaign.
Yeah. And only 2 episodes left on this month. So I guess not tomorrow, but next week will be the Halloween episode, for lack of a better phrase.
Okay, I'm glad you said that because I wanted to look that up. Okay, yeah, because Halloween is a Thursday, so the last Thursday. So so I guess. So yeah, next week I guess will be the Halloween episode. It would have been fun if this one was the Halloween episode with the dual characters.
I wonder, and I wonder how long the other campaign encounters will be. Like, will the Mighty Nine, could this be like a 3 or 4 episode arc of like sneaking through Kravirus and getting to the Weave Mind? Or could it just be like a 1 episode combat? Like they're there, they're fighting, you know, we have 4 hours to see how you deal with this. Glimmy, I can't remember if it's Glim or Glimmy now that we've talked about it.
I think you're right. Like the actual correct pronunciation is Glimmy, and I've let him know that I just can't do that because I've called him Glim for like literally 4 years. So
someone tells you their name, I just can't do that.
Well, no, okay, that does make me sound like a huge D-bag, but he said he was cool with it. So I mean, if he wanted me to, I would. But like, you know, it's just like anyway, maybe I am a huge douche and should say Glimmy.
Glimmy, though, I think it was our Friday wrap up, said throughout this number of maybe 5 to 10 episodes left on the campaign, which
If he like that feels certainly possible for sure. I guess it really just depends on what map. Like, I agree. I feel like it could go longer if they wanted it to, in terms of like an aftermath,
Mhm,
especially depending on what happens at this big
mhm.
climax. But yeah, I mean, it definitely feels like we're in the end game.
Yeah, we're here for sure. I
And
mean,
to your question about like singular episodes versus arcs for the other team, I would lean more singular episodes, just in
mhm,
terms of I like well, who am I? I was gonna say I don't think anybody would be mad if it was longer, but who am I kidding? There would definitely be people mad about any decision that happens. But I think in the purpose of like sticking to Bell's Hells as like this is their climax, that maybe we wouldn't spend too much time with the other groups, you know? So like maybe
yeah,
just singular episodes. Especially with Mighty Nine, since we're getting this time right now with them,
yeah,
that like when we do the split, like Mighty Nine will probably be like on. You know, there probably
yeah,
won't be much of a like, well, here we got to go do this and this and this. Like it'll probably just be immediately to the point. Vox Machina, since we aren't like spending the setup with them in the same way, I could see
yeah,
maybe being a little longer, especially with this. I don't know if this was a tease or not, but the interesting point of Keyleth not being able to find somebody, or maybe that's not fair to say, because maybe she can find them, but there's other difficulties. But like there was some like breadcrumb there, sort of. So
yeah.
maybe we'd spend a little bit longer with them, but I don't know.
I'm guessing this would be Scanlan, I would
I
assume?
was wondering. I think he's the only one we haven't seen, right?
Yeah. We're gonna have the search for Scanlan one shot.
I mean, I wonder what he's up to, because okay.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. We hadn't seen Grog, but we've seen him now.
Mhm.
Pike we've seen, Vex, Percy, um, Keyleth, obviously. Am I forgetting? I'm definitely forgetting one.
Well, we know,
Oh, Vax.
Vax.
Yeah, he doesn't really
Yeah.
count, kind of. So yeah, I think he's the only one that hasn't made an appearance now. So I would assume
Yeah.
it's him. Um, but yeah,
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, yeah, I could definitely see like an extra episode for like the setup for there, but then also to give more credence to there being possibly multiple episodes for Vox Machina, um, they're part of like a huge army, right? Like, isn't like all these armies heading out to the excavation site, like the
I th-
Bloody Bridge?
I think so, right? Because their mission is, what's his name? Is it
Ozo
Orzo?
Cruz?
Yeah, and he's at the
Orzo's a grain, but yeah, it's Ozo Cruz.
Ozo.
Yeah, yeah,
He's at like he's at the key, right?
yeah,
So yeah, I
right.
would imagine they're part of that big force.
Mhm.
So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. And I wonder, we did find out, or I think this was in the cooldown, but Robbie isn't playing in the Mighty Nine. Like he doesn't have
Oh,
um at least
I guess it makes sense.
so they asked, I think one of the cast asked him, and he said, no, he said, I'm gonna be the anchor for everybody, because everybody else is gonna have to be swapping between their two characters. Um, so I would at least presume that means he's not going to be in the one shot Mighty Nine either, unless there's
Yeah,
some last minute addition. But I hope he'll still be in the Vox Machina one, because that I just think that would be fun. But
yeah,
yeah, we did find out he's not going to be in the Mighty Nine one.
yeah. Okay, interesting. Okay, yeah. So, we had a lot of goodbyes in this episode.
Mm,
It felt, yeah, it just felt like we're here, like
yeah.
this is it. Um, so they're heading back to Rudis, presumably next episode. Small, like random segue, by the way. Did you think there was anything of interest as to why the lake monster's gone? Because they didn't fight it.
Yeah.
So
What did they just what did they do last time? I remember like some of them were possessed and like walking into the water,
yeah,
but like they circumvented that, and then they just left
mhm.
it.
There was
They didn't
something
kill
like
it, right? Because then they wouldn't
no,
have
they
even
didn't.
asked where it was if they had killed it.
Yeah, they didn't even fight it. Yeah,
Yeah. So
So
yeah, I don't know. It's kind of strange. Maybe. Yeah, I don't know.
did it follow them into?
Did it like go to Ruidus?
Yeah.
Mm,
So I don't know.
yeah. Weird.
Well, moving backwards on the reunion, um, we had some goodbyes. We had a great conversation with Ashton and Dorian and
Yeah.
Breas and Dorian. I don't know how much we want to park on either of these conversations.
Oh,
Um, I will just say in general with I love these conversations and I love that they all involved Dorian. I think there's even a comment at the table of like, man, everyone's talking to Dorian because he's just so likable,
yeah.
honestly. But the Breas Dorian conversation, I still unrelated to the convo, I still wondered in my head of a could we get a decision by the end of the campaign that betrays the party
Mm.
for Breas's own self-interest?
I think it's definitely on the table. Like I feel like whether or not he'll do it, I feel like
Yeah.
that's at least a plot point that's going to come up because like I just feel like there's no way Asmodeus isn't going to like
Yeah.
there's going to be an ask, you know?
Yeah.
So it made me wonder like was Breas asking that in that moment in terms of like so he would have more
Like
like
leverage or
yeah,
something
like
or
more I don't know if manipulation is the right word, but like more
right.
control over a potential like
Yeah.
or was it truly in earnest out of a place of like how do I connect with people? And I feel like it's the former.
Yeah. Right.
So, um yeah, I mean I'm interested to see how Matt develops that, but I certainly think something's coming. I don't and again, since this is like sort of a temporary character. I mean, it's his main PC, but like, since F.C.G passed and Breas is only here for the final bit, I do think Sam would maybe be a bit more inclined to do something crazy. Like maybe he
Mhm.
would betray them. But also, like when it really comes down to it, I don't know if he would. Just in terms even like on a meta level, like would he really like
Mhm.
screw his friends over like that? So I don't know.
Yeah. The other detail that I forgot to mention, unrelated to this conversation, was that we have Talison's playing Caduceus.
Yes, I was very happy to see that.
I
With
can't
no
remember
no
the
disrespect
Kingsley
to
was the other character.
sorry, what? Sorry.
Kingsley was
Yeah, yeah.
his other character.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um and yeah, no, nothing against Kingsley, but especially since we got Kingsley and the Mighty Nine reunion, I just have been missing my
Mm.
boy Caduceus. So plus I think Caduceus is much more ripe for interesting interactions. Specifically with because he's very devoted to a god, the Wild
Mm.
Mother. So like there could be some good like if they broach that subject, some good juicy RP there, and maybe with Orem too, since he's connected to the Wild Mother, and Ford is also connected to the Wild Mother. Um,
Which is an interesting foil to Ashton, who is seemingly
Mm.
very much convinced now team run away the gods from
yeah,
his vision with the primordial spirits, for lack of a better phrase.
right, right. Yeah, I'm so ready. Again, they were talking about how much time they would actually have, but I really hope we get a bunch of interesting cross
Mhm.
campaign dynamics here because there's so much to mine there. And even like you just mentioned, Ashton and Caduceus would be really interesting, but I doubt we get too many of like the the two faced of the same character convos. But Veth
Two-Face.
and Breas
Good
would be
movie, by
another
the
great
way.
one. Sorry, what?
Good movie, by the way.
Two
Uh,
Face,
I mean, wait, no, sorry, dang it.
the
I was
Batman
thinking,
villain,
I was
Face Off.
thinking Face Off.
It is a good movie.
Though actually not that great of a movie. Having seen it years later, I was like, eh.
That's what I was exactly about to say. I haven't seen it in like 20 years. I'm curious, like if not that I expect it to like hold up, but would it still be like a fun, enjoyable movie, or is it just like oh
Yeah. Speaking of the Burden Maidenheimer, yeah, which I'm just gonna do the best I can to whatever. Speaking of that movie, um, someone mentioned it to me the other day, and then someone else mentioned it to me this last weekend. And this guy was telling me that he watched it on TV, and he was like, "Yeah, apparently the TV version is much more tame than the the video version, which I watched with my wife, and she was like, "This is a very aggressive movie." So anyway, that's kind of peak '90s action. I feel like was it the
Yeah,
'90s actually, or was it the early 2000s? Who
I
knows?
think it was 90s. Isn't like one of the first things he does
Yeah,
like sleep with the other guy's wife? Like doesn't want
yeah, something
yeah.
like that.
It's a bit
Yeah,
it's a bit yeah.
Ooh.
Ugh. Which
1997.
okay. So I know
So
that did you watch the second Wonder Woman movie?
yes, and I thought it was fine. My wife hates that movie.
I hated it too because I really enjoyed the first one. Like I was pleasantly surprised by the
Yeah,
first one, and then the second one just I thought was so bad. But there was also like a really suspect
yeah,
scene like that. You know what I
yes,
mean? Because she sleeps
yes,
with Chris Pine, but he's in another dude's body.
yes,
He's just
right.
like possessing, and it's like this feels kind of weird.
This was definitely one of those movies where you start reading like the reviews on it and like people's thoughts, and then like you read that like line about it, and you're like, oh yeah, ooh, that's not great. So,
Yeah. And it just
but
was
no,
like it's just completely glossed over too. Like there was
excuse me.
absolutely no consideration
Yeah,
taken.
yeah. My wife it got brought up the other day, and she was like, "That is the worst movie I've ever seen," and I was like, "We've seen some bad movies together. Like that's the worst." And she was like, "Oh yeah, it's the worst,"
Yeah. It's
which
not
is
the
too bad.
worst, unfortunately, for me, but it's
Yeah.
definitely not the greatest. Skyline, we saw together. That's one of the
That's
worst
pretty
movies
bad.
I've ever seen.
Yeah, that's pretty bad. The movie that I would say was the worst would be Arondir from Rings of Power, the elf dude. Have you seen season 2 yet?
I've seen the first two.
Okay,
I'm in the
okay.
third one.
You know who I'm talking about though?
Is the
He
main one the main elf guy?
the guy no, not I can't think of his name. Not Elrond. Arondir is he's the guy who originally gets captured by Mordor forces in
Oh
season
yeah.
1, and then he
Yeah.
has the human love interest.
Yeah, yeah.
He's in a movie where he plays a villain and he kidnaps this girl, and everyone thinks she's like an FBI spy, but she's not. She's a random girl. And by the end of the movie, she gets recruited by the FBI to like be a spy because of like the sequence of events of
Yeah.
her like outwitting this guy who's kidnapped her. He's like robbing a bank and takes her as a hostage. And
Mm.
then like somehow she pretends. It's real bad, man. That would be probably in the last 10 years, it would be the worst movie I've ever seen.
Oh wow. Worse than Skyline?
Well, wasn't that more than 10 years ago
No, yeah,
now?
it was definitely more than 10
Yeah.
years ago. I just
Skyline is like a fever dream. I don't
yeah.
even remember anything about it.
This is a good thing, man. That's a good thing.
So
And then we've been watching fall movies because it's fall, so we've been watching like and by fall movies, basically if it has one scene where there's like an orange tree, that makes it a fall movie. But there's one movie called Autumn in New York, and it's a contestant for the worst movie I've ever seen. So for those of you that know, you know, but it's terrible. Um, Forgot
getting
how.
back to campaign 3
Yeah,
now.
how we even get on this tangent. Uh,
So, so yeah, we had some goodbyes, we had some good conversations. There's probably going to be some good conversations in the next episode. Um, do we want to park on the trance or like the encounter Ashton had? I don't know really what else there is necessarily to say about it. Like, nothing was really revealed from it. Do you have anything you want to add to that though?
um, yeah, not really like anything to add necessarily, but I really liked that, and I liked kind of the further confirmation from not confirmation is not the right word, but from Matt to the idea that like if the gods go, like things will be okay. Like
Mhm,
the cycle will continue. Like this place
mhm.
existed before the gods, it can exist after. So I would be interested to see again if that is the route we go, what a post deity Exandria looks like. But yeah, I just thought it was cool. And in the cooldown, Matt did confirm that like the that vision was of like pre Pantheon Exandria. So like
That's what I
um
thought. Okay.
so yeah, I just thought that was really cool to see. And makes me wonder like if that were to happen, like would those primordials like this might just be the wrong way to think about it, but like the individualism of like Comort or whoever, like would they come back or would just new primordials come back?
I
You know?
think it's an interesting question, and maybe this is like a little bit too spicy of a topic in that I've seen some criticism that Matt is trying to create like a deity-less world of Exandria as like a reflection of he and the cast's whatever religious or lack thereof of I don't know what the phrasing is, whatever their personal life is like, they're trying to
Yeah.
shape the world around it. And in some ways, I think we play games to sometimes fulfill things that we're not necessarily walking through, but just like things we think about. I don't necessarily think that this is any kind of I don't know the word. I don't know if Matt's necessarily trying to create a certain thing. I do think we've talked a long time ago about could Matt be like kind of wiping the slate clean and seeing what gets created out of it,
Mm-hmm.
which is very much kind of how it feels. And it feels like Matt talking about the cycle and like things working in spite of the gods leaving is him assuring the cast members that like, hey, whatever decision you make, there is
Yeah.
still a campaign for
Yeah.
whether that happens at Exandria or not. But there's still more stories to be told, and whether that's like a classic pantheon of deities or whether that's some maybe you mentioned it or one of us mentioned it of like could we see like a more I don't want to say whole pantheon, but like maybe new deities or maybe these primordials coming back and having more of like a nature-esque representation of
Yeah.
certain things. I mean, I don't know, but it seems like mechanically speaking for D&D, there are quite a few mechanics that are related to deities. I mean, you think of just like class identities like
Yeah.
clerics and paladins, but also like certain spells and things of that nature. So, I could definitely see there being like a primordial spin on things.
Yeah. I think that's what Matt was doing. Just letting them know that like, if you guys do decide to be team no more gods, like that's not gonna doom the
Yeah.
world.
Yeah. You're not like,
Um
well,
I
oops.
yeah. I personally don't think it's at all Matt like
Yeah. I think,
proselytizing about
yeah,
like his
I
own
agree with you.
view on like that
But I think
doesn't
this is
check out for me.
I think this is also a little bit this is maybe a little too meta for this for us just our casual, nerd talk, but I think it's a little bit of kind of how people today tend to like the lens they tend to apply to things of like this is like part of a greater narrative or like a political thing or what
Yeah.
have you. And I think at the end of the day, a lot of people are just enjoying their hobbies. So I would agree with you. I don't think it's part of like a greater thing
Yeah.
other than just,
I think it's just an
very
interesting way the
interesting.
narrative has developed for literally 10 years at this point in
Yeah.
terms of like the grand machinations of this world he created. And I also think there's a pinch of real life copyright stuff influencing this because they
Yes.
keep moving away
Yes.
from the official names of the gods. And so let's just wipe the
Yeah.
slate clean and
I love you mentioning this of just I think there's absolutely an IP conversation to be had
yeah.
here of like what would we yeah, and honestly Brennan's getting to appreciate that process a lot with Wizard Witch and the Wild One as he creates the world of Umora and the great spirits and kind of how they're all illustrated or how they come to life so to speak. So I think it's probably, and not that Matt necessarily feels this way, but since he's been world building for 10 years, I think maybe wiping the slate clean, I would assume would be a really energizing thing, especially
Yeah.
when we talk about like, if I'm going to do this for the next 10 years again, like, how would I do that in a way that's really fun for me?
Yeah.
Um,
And
so,
it's only getting bigger and more branches. We have a television show now. We have books. Like they've talked about video games. And like, do you really want to be tethered to Wizards of the Coast for all of that? Like, oh yeah, it's like, oh, can we use Vecna? We have to give them the, like, no, they of course they don't. So like, I think again, I'm not saying that this decision is entirely for that reason, but I definitely think that's a force at play here. Like,
Oh,
let's
you're
just
100% right.
get
Yeah.
our own stuff and not have to worry about any of that.
It's absolutely two birds with one stone.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, I think maybe if in another lifetime, if Wizards of the Coast or Hasbro really
Yeah.
had been a bit more redeemable in their how they have
Yeah.
approached fandom in the last few years, I think things would be different. But yeah, I totally agree with you.
Yeah. And that being said, there's still like I don't know the right turn of phrase to hear. In bed together is a bit not the phrase I want to use, but that's what I'm saying. Cause like
Well, they have a really positive collaboration in many
yeah.
ways.
And I think Matt like helped with part of the new dungeon. Like he wrote like
Yeah.
a forward or something for the new Dungeon Master's Guide or whatever. So like,
Yep.
I think they're still going to be collaborators, but at the same time, it's like, let's, as we
Mhm.
continue to grow, let's keep growing in our own direction type of thing.
Yeah.
Um,
100%.
but yeah.
Well, moving on from that um, long tangent, I guess. Well, not really a tangent, but what else from this episode? It's always funny when we have these episodes where we're like, it was good, but not a lot happened.
Yeah.
um, anything else like pop up that you want to talk about?
Let me look at my notes really quick. But honestly, again, I enjoyed the episode, but it really was kind of, some more planning, the things we are like kind of just going over the same things we already knew. So I feel like there isn't too much to dissect here. Um Already kind of mentioned this, but I did just love the moment with Dorian going around and singing.
Mm-hmm.
Um
Yep.
yeah, or go ahead.
The only thing I would say is having so many goodbyes. I still wondered, like, is this actually like kind of a tragic final goodbye for some of these characters, specifically Orem? Orem had the message to his mom. He said goodbye to his sister, and it was like, "See you soon." But like, assuming everyone survives this, I mean, Orem's also bound to um, Grandma Mori,
Moria.
uh, Morrigan. Why do I keep doing this, man? Why is it so hard for me?
You keep thinking Rin.
I guess so. But anyway, so kind of a bummer. His character doesn't really get the happy ending, I guess, regardless of what happens.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? Maybe
Yeah,
like we don't. I guess we don't know for sure what the Morrigan
yeah,
situation looks like. But yeah, I mean, Orem definitely has just been kind of operating as a
yeah.
sacrificial pawn for a while. So we'll see. I mean, they were joking about Matt has the opportunity to give a double TPK in this next episode with the two parties together. But yeah, I am curious. Like, I obviously think these encounters are going to be tough.
Yeah.
So some people might not make it out, but uh, this is one thing I wanted to touch on a little bit. It is really cool. Like, I just wonder what Matt has in mind because that item he gave them was so cool. The Dunamantic thing,
Yeah.
um, which was something that powerful. It must be a treacherous encounter they're stepping into to give them that. Uh,
They've been given a lot of stuff in the
yeah.
last like 10 episodes, so yeah, I'd say buckle up for sure.
Which I also am curious if we'll get any more fun RP with the drugs Chetney bought before the final before the final encounter.
Yeah.
We'll see if that comes back into play or not. And they also have not really been harnessing. I guess not. I guess maybe it hasn't been like a day or whatever, but I was hoping we get a little bit more of that before.
I think we might get what you said of like it's been 3 days, here's the items we want to have done,
Yeah.
but also it also kind of just moved along a little bit faster than
Yeah.
maybe how it was first presented. Like the assault's like in 5 or 6 days, but like, oh, we can go ahead and go to Ruidus.
Right.
So we'll see, I guess.
Yeah, that's a good point actually. That they're I guess like not a week necessarily, but some time on Ruidus. So I wonder what they're gonna do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they have to infiltrate Kravirus again.
Right.
So I don't know. I think Matt may give a little bit of like a speed along,
Yeah,
to give them a chance for that, I guess. But we'll see.
I agree. But yeah, I don't think looking at my notes here, I don't think I had really too much anything else that we didn't already touch on.
All right. Well, for you all, tell us what you thought about the episode and some of your theories and thoughts on it. We'll have our watch party together tomorrow night for the latest episode 111, and then a few other events in the Discord, including our Friday wrap-up stream that you can join as well.
Yes.
So
Oh, and the Vox Machina watch party as well tomorrow.
that's right.
So yeah, hop in the Discord. There are events, and if you click interested, you'll get a little ping when those start. But yeah, looking forward to tomorrow, y'all. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Bye, y'all.